Today is the 2nd of April 2013, and I'm in London interviewing Bruce McLean and Mel Gooding about their collaborative project, Knife Edge Press. So first of all, I'm interested to know if the name of your collaboration, Knife Edge Press, has got any connection with the Henry Moore piece entitled Knife Edge.
The answer is no. As far as I can remember.
No.
It wasn't to do with that. There was no kind of reference of that kind.
No.
The name was really came about as a discussion, from a discussion in Berlin when we were making DreamWork with Michael Schonker at the Druckwerkstatt, the print workshop Battalion, which was, don't forget, this was before the wall came down, and it was quite close to the wall, and it was in Kreuzberg, which is a kind of working class area of West Berlin. And we stayed with Schonker, and after, I think, the first day of working on the sheets for Knife Edge Press, for DreamWork, we got to talking about how we were going to name, the setup, and I can't remember now the details. I can tell you who was there. There was Schonker, Bruce, myself, and Chris Baker, the painter, who's since died. And one of the things that clearly we felt that we were working on a kind of knife edge, that we were doing something which we didn't really quite know what we were doing. The printing was okay, but there was a real problem, and the real problem was folding. And of course there are very, very well-known systems of folding, and the images were made on large sheets so that several of the images, I think up to 8 images in the book, 8 of the pages in the book, were printed at the same time on one large sheet. The idea being you then fold it and whatever, and
cut it,
and then cut it. You see, so that's how you do it. There have been systems of folding and cutting for books since the 15th century. But for some reason, we didn't consult any of those systems, anybody who knew about those systems, and Michael Schonker assured us that he had worked out how to do it. The only problem was that when he'd done the sheets, they were all printed. I mean, totally. He began to fold it and realised that he had made a mistake. So, in fact, there's a certain roughness to the book, which actually is one of its virtues, as it turns out. But there's a great roughness in the binding and the folding, because we had to cut,
paper,
fold, thick paper, and all sorts of things to make it work.
But there was only one mistake. There was only one mistake, and it was rectifiable. I should rectify it.
Well, we did rectify it in the end, but it did lead to problems. And that was the sort of thing that made, we thought, well...
Edgy.
Very edgy. And we wanted to produce something that wasn't quite like other things, that had some edge to it. So there were various ideas, and a knife edge seemed to express something of what we felt about what we were doing. We were on a kind of knife edge.
We kind of worked like that, though, didn't we? We always thought it was just, it could either go that way or that way.
Yes.
We could either go,
that's right,
or oop.
Yes.
So that the knife edge seemed to, we worked in a state of panic.
On that occasion,
we set up. We put everything off the last minute, then had to do it, sort of thing. The folding, the printing. We did it all on a weekend.
That's
right.
The
whole book.
We took the reason Chris Baker was with us is because we needed another hand to help us to do the humping and the shoving and the what have you, and the fold and so on. And I think it was, it might have been Chris who actually said knife edge, or something like that. Anyway, we all agreed at that point. And that we then also, not long after that, we invented the logo, which is, Bruce invented the logo, which we like very much because it looks a bit like the CND symbol.
And it's like a man doing like that.
Yes, and
but it's actually a K and an E.
It's a K and an E. The E is resting on whatever. We've got it here, but if you look at it, the E is actually balancing on a knife edge.
Okay.
So that was the way all that came about. It was itself done, kind of.
I just trying to think, was it
spontaneously, really, in Berlin.
Did it come from Did it came from fish knife, the award-winning fish knife?
I think we might have started with things like that.
Because the fish knife, I did that piece in '79.
That's right. That was about 6 years earlier.
Yeah, it might have come out of that. I'm kind of obsessed with fish knives.
Yes,
not really, but sort of.
Yes.
I don't know, but
it was edge.
I remember thinking that we were talking about it was always a bit so it was like on a knife edge.
Yes.
We're always kind of it might fail. We quite like the fact it could fail or succeed. So it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is that the failure could have been not only artistic, as you might say, it could have been financial. We had got money in, or we had money promised. We didn't have money, but we had money promised on the system we used the first 2 or 3 books. In fact, we continued to use it, but was of getting subscriptions from people who were interested to commit themselves to pay for a kind of pre-publication copy.
Can you remember the price that we asked for pre-publication?
Pre-publication.
Have you got the documentation of that somewhere?
I have got it, but I'd be hard put to find it now. I think for Knife Edge, it was something as little as £150.
It was £200 when we sold it, wasn't it?
I think so.
At the time of 1985, it was quite a lot of money.
Yes.
People coughed up, and I thought it was £200 pre-subscription and £250.
I think you might be right. Wasn't a lot of money because it was a big thing. I mean, it was a very big, beautiful thing, and we made it. We made the estimate of the price basing on if this many people supported it, we would have enough money to cover the printing and the binding.
And the boxing up.
And the boxing, because it's in a box. And when we made it, every issue, because we did it in this house, had glass paper between every page. Do you remember? We did that with Bruce's wife, Rosie, and my wife, Rhiannon, and us two working in the big room downstairs, putting glass paper between every sheet. We sold it on the basis that it was, a print would cost that much, a single print, and that what you had was, all told, 32 colours. I mean, it was a crazy...
you could rip the middle page out and use that as a print if you wanted.
If you wanted to. And we also, of course, it went into a case, a slip case, but it also had a jacket, a paper jacket, which we intended to be detachable, as it were, and itself used as a print. So you got a print, you got the book.
You got a good deal for 200 quid.
Yes.
50 quid.
So the origins of the idea came about, well, there are two things. One was the whole notion of printmaking itself as a way of distributing more widely, disseminating more widely original works of art at reasonable prices. So, and that's an aspect of what was the whole printmaking project, post-war printmaking project, was based on that set of assumptions. That this was a virtuous thing to do and a democratic thing to do. But the other thing, Bruce, you must correct me if at any point here, but the other thing was that we felt that some beautiful things had been made at a very difficult period just after the war, in France especially, in the magazines like Verve, 20th Century, Aujourd'hui, Aujourd'hui, although that was just a very good magazine. The ones that I'm talking about, especially Verve, were made by first-class printmaker bookmakers like Terriard, and secondly, they had a fairly broad subscription base for sale, so there were lots of them were done, and they would include in these books original prints by world artists, Matisse, by Miro, by really extraordinary artists were doing this. And I have some of these books, and I remember showing them to Bruce and saying, look at these, this is what, if they could do it during that period, it's immediately post-war, a time of great austerity, why can't something beautiful like this be made now? And that's how we kind of came to the idea that using screen printing you could actually make a beautiful book and sell it at a reasonable price. And that's how DreamWork came about, really.
But I think the press came about because when I met Mel in a bar, the Bull's Head, he was reading a book, and I really kind of objected to somebody sitting on there and reading a book in a pub. It'd be quite irritating. So I spoke to him, we had a conversation, and it came to pass that Mel wanted to set up a press to publish poetry or writings and stuff. That's where it started. That's what you wanted to do. And then you knew who I was, and then I found out who you were. And then we said, well, we must do a book. Then Mel, as he said, showed me the stuff, and I thought, well, that seems easy. Not easy, but if it's possible for these guys to do it, we can certainly do something, surely. So that's why we decided to do it.
I'd been following Bruce anyway, and interested in Bruce. As a kind of case, really, I thought,
But you didn't really know each other?
No. Not really, but we went to the same pub.
Oh, right, okay.
And so at a certain point, as I said, Bruce came over, we spoke, and I had it in mind that a great text to print, I simply was very naive, really, about all this stuff, and I said to Bruce, is anybody going to publish the texts, which I thought were brilliant, for Sorry? Sorry was a performance, a large-scale performance, featuring Bruce himself, and largely featuring Bruce himself.
Had a spare moment at the time.
Yes, right. Sylvia Cyranek was doing some help from the wings, and there were a number of texts, repetitions and word games in it. And I was much impressed by these. And
really? You never told me that before.
And I said to Bruce, is anybody actually publishing your texts for Sorry? And he said, what? No, never occurred. And I said, well, I'm thinking of setting up a press. So I said, and it would be great to print them, and to do an edition of them. So Bruce, ever with an eye to the main chance, said, not knowing that the whole thing was a fantasy, actually said, great, of course you can. So I thought, fantastic, I'm set up now. After further discussion, you see, what really happened is that I realised that the best thing is to get someone else to do it, and Bruce came back from Berlin, and he had been, just after he left Berlin, just before he left Berlin, he had met Michael Schonker, and they'd made a couple of rough old prints together, because that's what Schonker is really good at, making rough, elegant things, or elegant, rough things. He's not he can do it, and he's done it. He's done it a lot, but because he has to, but what he likes to do are things that are not perfect registration and so on. He likes roughness in the things. So in that sense, of course, there was a great deal of sympathy immediately engendered between Bruce and Shankar. So when we began to think about this, the Druckwerkstatt, where he was the director and he ran it, seemed the obvious place to go, and that's why we went there.
That's great.
So it became, that's the way. The actual sheets for the printing, the ink sheets were made one by one at Bruce's studio at Riverside Studios, and we really did spend most of the night for several nights working on those, just simply making one image after another, hundreds and hundreds of images. And as we did it, gradually the idea emerged. I made the suggestion that what we should make a book of was I wanted to call the book at first Compendium, and the poem in the book, or the text in the book, is called Compendium for that reason, because what we can do to start with is do a compendium of McLean motifs. Ladders, ties, high heel shoes, frying pans, nudes, whatever, all the things that Bruce had been doing one way or another over the few years before that. Do you remember? This is true, isn't it? And he'd do maybe 15, 20 on this. What's the name of that material? Sheets.
Coda trays.
What?
Coda trays.
Coda trays, so that it could be easily.
You paint it. You draw it on that with black, and that makes them put it on the screen. Then you can put the colour.
That's right. So everything was done in black and white, and if he ran out of saying, he'd do a number of ladders, and then I'd say, do some ties.
Yeah, I could do ties.
Yeah.
Shells are all problematic.
At the same point, I said, why don't you do some shells? Because I was beginning to get a picture of how the thing might work. And but there is a little known secret that Bruce can't draw shells. What we did is we got a doofy, a simple doofy, a Raoul doofy shell, well, a picture one, and
copied it.
And Bruce copied it. He'd made a pretty good job of it, and so on. So that's how the imagery. DreamWork is a kind of inventory, really, of
inventory. That's what it was.
Inventory.
I couldn't think of the word. Yeah.
Yeah, of McLean motifs
At that time.
at that time, and DreamWork, because actually it was. We had a kind of dream that we would make a very spectacular book, and the book that came out was a kind of the dream work.
We sold a lot, didn't we, more or less? I think we sold them all.
We sold most of them.
Yeah.
Yes, we did extremely well, and we had a most spectacular launch. That's the great thing that Knife Edge did, certainly in the early years.
We can't find the photographs of this thing.
We've got to try and find them.
It's a total mystery. There's big X across.
But we did, for each of those first books, we did very spectacular, ridiculous. I mean, in the case of DreamWork, we spent half the money that we would ever make on it by actually giving people the most expensive cocktails at Riverside Studio. And we took a whole set of the books Bruce designed. It was a brilliant idea that across the studio...
I had to go diagonally across the studio because it was so big.
The studios at Riverside Studios really were studios. Enormous. And the theatre studios had seating which was taken out, could be taken out if you wanted it, and you could have the whole space. So we had what was a very big space.
It was 75 feet or longer, the diagonal.
Yes.
Because what we
wanted
to do is to put the book down at the beginning on a cover, with a cover on and the thing. And the book open at page 1, open at page 2, all the pages all the way through. So nobody touch the book if they wanted to look at the book. They didn't want people to touch the thing because it would get mucked up. So we devised this low table with every page, and then the book closed there, and we had lights hanging on the thing, light bulbs hanging, so it was very low, just over the thing. Table, and then we had a Don Weller playing a saxophone at one end, there's modern jazz at the one end. But only one person touched the books, you know that?
The reason the books are open
So you can look.
is so you can look at them without touching them.
But that's quite an interesting point, because a lot of artists making artist books, they were concerned about this accessibility to artworks, so they want people or viewers to touch the books.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's okay if they buy the book, they can open it. I mean, sometimes we've given them white gloves, they can look, but it's such a mess, people flicking through. But we thought, make a nice display in a darkened room, bar at one end, saxophone at the other, and people could walk down the thing and see the whole book in its entirety. It was fantastic, and I don't know where the photographs are.
The idea was partly to put the book on, an ironic gesture, you might think,
Plinth.
to put the book on a plinth.
Yeah.
But the plinth itself was at a diagonal, and it was very, very long. So you had this amazing perspectival view, you know. And at the end, in one spotlight, was Don Weller, the sax player, playing just an extended improvised solo.
Fantastic.
And then at one side we had a bar
Champagne cocktails.
with champagne cocktails. I mean, it was crazy, really, and it was packed.
We thought we might sell all the books. We sold 3 at the opening, but that was all right. Paid for the champagne, I think. Yeah.
For Ladder, we did a wonderful, mad, absolutely mad kind of. Again, we took the Riverside Studios.
No, we didn't. No, it was a bull.
No,
Was it
for
a bull?
Ladder,
Was
it
it?
was Riverside Studios
it?
with everybody in seating,
Oh,
two
was it- it wasn't,
microphones, Tommy Chase, who had been playing at the Bull's Head, you know,
he came
regularly at that time, and Tommy Chase is a drummer with a trio. So he's an
They're not really
incredibly
familiar with that.
violent.
projections of the book behind there.
Violent
He was
drummer.
drumming. He was drumming with the
That's
book.
right.
So that's the ladder, that book.
Yeah.
So what happened is we had projections of the Ladder
They're not
on
really-
either side of the stage. We had Tommy Chase and his trio in the middle of the stage. We had 2 microphones, and on one microphone I read a text,
From
one
the book.
page of text
On the book.
from Ladder,
Yeah.
very formally,
Yeah.
and Michael Schonker, who came over for this and had printed Ladder, stood at the other microphone, and he read it, translated into German. So he had an English text, German text. The reason for the German text is that we decided to dedicate the book to Boyce, who had just died.
Yeah.
So Schonker did it in a very, very clipped German,
German, I
and
said,
I
"No."
did it in a very formal English, and I
I
read,
liked the book.
he read, there was a pause. Tommy Chase played 3 minutes of completely explosive
Drumming.
jazz. Stopped. Text. And
It was
3
very
minutes
good.
of explosive music, and that lasted for, I think there's 12 images, 12 texts. And just halfway through, Bruce, feeling that this wasn't quite exciting enough, ran down the aisle, also because he wasn't on stage, and you know, so he was getting more and more worried at the lack of exposure. So he ran down one of the aisles and kicked the screen, which had one of the images projected onto it of the ladders, which then shook and shook. And I'll tell you something else that happened. It was dedicated to Boyce.
I didn't do that, did I?
You did. It was most weird. Anyway,
Why did you do that?
no, what you did. I thought it was rather like you, in fact. Anyway, it was all good
That
fun.
sounds familiar.
Tremendous lot of noise. People laughed. Tommy Chase doing these explosive 3-minute bursts. And then just at the very end, when everybody was going to come on stage and drink, because we had a lot of drink behind, everything was ready for a big booze up, which in fact ensued. But just at the very end, Bruce came on stage and said, "I've just heard the terrible news. Andy Warhol has died." So in fact, it happened on the day that Warhol died.
That's right, I remember, yeah.
And it all seemed very, very extraordinary because there was the Boyce-Warhol connection, which we were very interested in, actually. There was this German and English kind of thematic with this noise. It was very, very... well, it was... As book launches go, I think it was quite extraordinary.
I've forgotten about that. There's funny things you forget. I completely forgotten about it. I don't know why. Why did I keep the screen?
I don't know. I think you felt something needed to change a bit. You felt the format was becoming a little bit, I did a
bit of a Dieter Roth.
I think you did something that was like that, yes.
Yeah, I must have got the idea from Dieter Roth.
It was a kind of gesture.
Yeah. I forgot about Andy Warhol. He did die
the news was announced. Nobody knew until you'd heard it. Somebody came and said they'd just heard it on the radio or something.
Yeah, because Boyce died in '86.
Yes.
Yes. That was a very strange... See, that's a strange business. It's like Kelly. Why did they both die at the same time, in the same year? And they were both very great rivals. In a friendly sort of way.
We always tried to make the launches
an event.
Some kind of event.
Yeah. So what other launches? What's the next launch? The next one was at Doffy's, wasn't it?
At Doffy's we did it. We launched the book when you did your exhibition there in '87.
Yeah, that was before the story. Yeah, '87. Yeah.
With the
Home
the
Manoeuvres.
girl. Home Manoeuvres the book is called, and Bruce did the fireplaces and things. A lot of stuff in that show which related, and pots, I think, which related to the whole idea of the domestic, and the text it's about what happens in the home. Other things we did that was also a kind of quite spec, because the show plus the book, and the book was presented as a kind of not a catalogue of the show, but that's a very beautiful book. And then we did other ones where after a while we didn't have the money, or we didn't have quite the chutzpah, I suppose, to carry on doing mad things.
But you made a good point there, which you reminded me of, was the fact the Doffy book with the Home Manoeuvres. I could have done a catalogue for that show, maybe, but I didn't. And I'm actually very unkeen on catalogue. I mean, you make a show, and then you make a catalogue. Well, I've done that with the Tate in 1972. The show was the catalogue, so why do you make a show on the catalogue? I think the catalogue sort of anyway. So it seemed to be a better idea if you're going to make a show to make a book to accompany or complement the show, which is actually a work in itself. It's not a catalogue of the show; it's a separate thing. So we did that a few times. Like the vertical balcony was replaced the catalogue.
Apropos the jug, we made that to accompany the show at Den Bosch.
Yeah, Den Bosch.
Whatever it's called, Den Bosch in Holland. And Bruce did a show of pots, jugs, and bowls, and we did.
That was good show.
Apropos the jug we made in order to sell at that show.
Yeah.
So it was all about jugs. The whole book is about what.
But we did use the book as a means of actually kind of replacing the catalogue.
Yes, there's
that's
something
what
else.
I did. I looked at quite a few. I thought, I don't want to do a catalogue. I want to do a book. That's what we did.
Well, that was Home Manoeuvres. That was Jug. They were both examples of that.
And the potato for Japan.
Yes, the potato book.
Potato Rice War.
Yeah.
So when you did a book, would you have a title first?
It's very difficult to say. You have an idea. It's partly determined by talking with other people like Matthew Tyson, who's a very good kind of maker of things, and about how you could make a book, in what way you could make a book. Home Manoeuvres, for example, he made by doing a particular Japanese style with a sewn, held together by sewing. apropos, the jug was made very, very simply, but once we had the idea that it would be a small, tall book, and that we could do it with blind emboss, simple jug shapes, which were cut out, Bruce made and were cut out, and that was done by Ian Tyson,
His father, yeah,
who also is a skilled printmaker.
He should teach me.
Exactly. So that's actually blind embossed images with a very small text underneath, and then Bruce did some hand colouring, which always helps to sell a book.
And I've noticed there's another book, The Vertical Balcony, got a lot of collages in it.
Yes.
Did you do that with your hands, or just?
Yeah, we did it at home. I did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's 100 copies.
Well, we got the thing printed, and then Bruce added the hand collage,
cut bits onto
mostly to obscure my texts. And this is a technique Bruce perfected over the years of finding ways in which to obscure and cover up my texts. But
the vertical balcony came from looking at a piece of neo bullshit classical architecture by Quinlan Terry in Richmond, and I thought, this is a state of affairs. All these strap-on balconies and all this nonsense, and the balconies you can't use. So I made a vertical balcony which you can't stand in at all. So I did a dance piece called Vertical Balcony, a real gazebo.
That's right.
Yeah, and the gazebo is a place because you can't look from a vertical balcony, you can't stand on it. But so that company, that show at Bristol, where I did a dance piece with that dancer.
That's right. That's right.
Called the Vertical Balcony, a real gazebo.
The other thing we did quite late was we became interested in the idea of an academy, which was a kind of invisible academy. This was came out of irritation with the way in which things were going in the art schools, and the increasing kind of academisation and bureaucraticization of the art schools, and we had the idea that you could actually have a very effective art school by simply bringing people together, and that you could organise it from a telephone box in the Edgware Road.
Yeah.
So we made one of the things we did as Knife Edge Press was a prospectus for the Knife Edge Academy, as we called it. And this prospectus consisted of 6 prints. So you'd have the prospectus on the wall, or off the wall, as you might say. So, and that was, I think, that was a good work. That
nobody got it, of course. Nobody gets anything.
No, it's very funny because I presented that at a conference, an art school conference at Tate, which was about the future, or some such thing. Yeah. Of the art school, with all sorts of people from all sorts of art schools talking about what was required.
So that's still in the 80s?
This was in the 90s.
90s.
And I can tell you the date sometime, but we had, I talked a bit about this project, and it's quite interesting because I then showed the slides and read the text, and it was completely, the response to it was completely po-faced.
Yeah.
Were you there, Bruce? I think
no.
You were. No.
I don't want to talk about the Tate or anything
no,
to do with the Tate.
No, anymore. Neither do I. What I'm just saying is the interesting thing was there were all these people. This was, I thought, A, it had a real point, but B, it was at least a kind of
talking point. It
was to some extent quite funny that you could have an academy that actually was invisible, that didn't exist, and that we made a number of texts about...
Very good texts, actually, which they had more response lately, actually, because when I went to that Decorated School Symposium in Lucian a month ago, and I showed that, and it said lunching, laughing and learning.
That's right.
And everyone fell about, and I said, that's the only way to proceed. We're not going to proceed, and I think we should stop for lunch now, and we'll continue laughing in a minute. And they all got very good, and they always, absolutely. can't learn without laughing, and you can't learn without lunching and laughing.
And it would also be an open academy, so it would be open all hours, open,
full candles,
open for business, and so on. And all that stuff. So there's a whole lot of wordplay about this being open all hours and what have you. And as I said, I read these myself, extremely po-faced, of course, at the podium, and a kind of dumb silence was the reception.
Probably made by a bunch of dumb people.
Well, you could see what was happening. They were saying, What's this supposed to mean? What's going on here? Is this supposed to be funny? Well, it wasn't really supposed to be funny, but it was at least supposed to be, and was, I think, a kind of witty, a slant, sideways look at how you might actually think about things. But that's why I mentioned it, and it was appropriate that it should have been at that institution.
So I was quite interested in, how you collaborate together, both of you. So as a writer, as an artist, how you interact during, in this collaboration.
It was very difficult because I can't read and write, so it makes it quite problematic for me to deal with Mel, who of course can, but he can't do rabbit runs. So no,
I can't make a rabbit hutch, and I can't draw.
No, the thing is, you can. The thing is we just like to have a drink and a chat and enthuse each other, and sometimes we think we must do something, then we don't, then we should do something, then we don't. No, I mean, we're thinking of doing another book just now.
Yes, we are.
In fact, I would like to say, no, we'd like to try to make another book for the show, so we get another book. And that would be a good excuse to make a book, because there's so many things to do in life, you can't do everything, but you need the odd thing that just makes you focus. So that's, we never did that before. So I suppose the shows that I was doing focused our attentions and that. But how we collaborate? Well, Mel might say, let's do a book about this. And I say, oh yeah, okay. How should we do it? Should we do it with woodcuts? No, we've done that. Should we do it with potato? Let's do potato cuts. We haven't done potato cuts, so let's do some other means of doing something. Let's try something out.
So the interaction always happens simultaneously between...
Well, it just goes on. It can go on over a period of time. But often the real... the catalyst... If that's the right word, that brings about the object, the change, is some kind of technical idea. Basically, is how we get. First of all, what technique, what medium. So we used screen printing because it suited our purposes for quite a lot. But then we began to realise you can do other things. So the blind emboss, the potato book, which has a screen print based on some of the pages, and then every page has a potato print, and so on. But what's often helpful is when we then consult somebody about how it could be done, and you get an idea of the shape of the book, I guess the real thing that gets the whole thing finally going after we'd kicked around ideas and so on often for quite a while in a very informal way.
Can I say something? Just interrupt for a second. That's true, but the last book we made was the Shadow book, if I'm right, and we hadn't made a book for a while. I don't think had we had a tiff.
No.
Had we fallen out? No. We just hadn't made any. We hadn't made a book for a while, and I think I don't know what I was doing. I was doing this and that, and this, and then I made these drawings from Spain, these shadow drawings, and I was in you came out to the studio for some reason
to look at them, possibly.
Yeah, but you actually came for that. You were around the studio in the garden, and I got these drawings out. You went, oh God, I like these. And that's the first time you'd seen stuff that you'd actually kind of responded to positively for a while. So I thought, oh right, okay. And then we sorted them out, and we said we could make a book with these.
Yeah.
That you said that. He saw the drawings, and I could write the text about shadows based and motivated by you making these drawings. So that's how that came. I know that's how that came.
I can remember. First of all, you saw that they're very beautiful. I think long landscape format, and they had been made by Bruce. These drawings, and some of them were kind of collagey things as well. Very abstract, but based actually very precisely. Not topographically precise, but very precisely in terms of the kind of image he wanted of the town where Bruce has a house, in Menorca at midday, because that's when he'd often be travelling from home to studio. This is the story as told.
For sure.
And coming through the town, and that kind of quite harsh
Shadows are more
Balearic light
Yeah.
made a lot of shadows and created these fantastic abstract, geometric abstract designs, if you like. And that gave me the idea that this was about architecture, and about the shadow as a phenomenon. I think there's at the end there's something by Louis Kahn who says something like, a building doesn't know it's beautiful until it throws a shadow, or something like that. And there are various other things like that, and the idea of the shadow struck me as a very, very interesting one in all sorts of different ways, without stressing any of the metaphorical possibilities, but looking at the shadow as a phenomenon, architecturally speaking, and one realises, and you can see it, you just have to look out of this window to see that in fact no shadow, no concept of architecture. You can't actually see a building without realising that partly what you're seeing is the shadow it casts.
But nobody's thinking about that now, because the thing is, I was thinking was very, very interesting, and I'm going to do this in the village. There's a church in the middle of the village, and there's a butcher, and there's a bar, and a baker, and there's a church that's got a cross. It's got a dome on the cross, and then the dome on the cross, the shadow of the dome on the cross is banged onto the butcher shop. But the butcher shop isn't a church. The butcher shop is a butcher shop. So they should have a cross on another building to cast a shadow on the church, and a cow should be in the top of the church to cast a shadow on the butcher shop. If you wanted to play around, you could build the buildings to cast shadows on the other buildings to denote what the building's function was by the shadow. Do you know? It's kind of just a silly idea, but it could be quite a funny thing to do. Yeah. I'm thinking of doing it next year.
But you see, that idea is not that far from Kahn's idea. I mean,
no.
Certainly Louis Kahn didn't make a building, didn't design a building without thinking about what will happen when the sun shines on it and it throws a shadow,
he's one of very
and how
few
it will throw a shadow, because he realised that the experience of architecture isn't a matter of looking at an object. It's a phenomenological experience in which all sorts of things happen to the person passing the building, entering the building, leaving the building, being in the building. And part of that experience has got to be the shadows that fall on you and off you. There's a text in the Shadow book which is inspired entirely by a photograph by Corbusier, taken when he was very young, and it's in Towards a New Architecture, his great book, and it's a photograph of the columns of the Parthenon, but the photograph is really a photograph about light, shadow, vertical, horizontal, light, shadow, vertical, horizontal, and it goes away, and it's there all the time as a part of that experience.
But it's very good. What is curious, that in the foundation course at Glasgow School of Art, in 1961 to 63, it was a 2-year foundation course, a proper foundation course. One of the things we had to do was architectural studies, and one of the things run by a man called Ferguson, terribly, not very interesting man, peculiar man, but one of the things we had to do in this half an hour every week, one of the things we had to do was to take a building, any classical building we wanted. It had to be a classical, it could be Egyptian, a famous, any building, and make a drawing of it, a front elevation drawing of it to scale, and then to make paint the shadows on top of that building. If the sun was at a particular angle, you had to state which angle it was, what month it was, and the season. It was there or there or there, and then paint the shadows on it. And then when you did the shadows, the building then revealed itself, as Mel says, with the shadows. And the buildings were designed to deal with these shadows, and the architects who built these classical buildings knew where the sun went up and the sun went down. And because you get it on computer now, but they don't teach that or talk about that in schools of visual arts anymore. That is not discussed. They wouldn't know what I was talking about, and we all went, "Oh, what is this all about?" But nevertheless, it was even boring as it was. It was quite interesting because you really had to work it out, and you could work it out. And there was methodologies for working out how you could get how big that shadow was, the angle or to hit that. Yeah. Bit. When you get into these criddly bits, it's a bit more difficult. But it was just a fluted column or a.
There's one other reference which is quite interesting. When you went back to teach at Croydon, one of your colleagues was Fred Janes.
Absolutely.
And Fred Janes was a painter, a rather kind of interesting painter, but never terribly successful, except when he was very young. But he used to teach still life painting, and Bruce was always of the opinion that his real art were the still life arrangements that he made. And one of the things that he was very mindful of when he made a still life, he used to make very, very elaborate still lifes, sometimes painting the objects in the still life himself to create things about tonality and so on, and colour and positioning and perspective. But he was always mindful of the way in which the objects in the still life throw a shadow, and how that modifies the way you look at this ensemble of objects.
Yes, he would do a white still life one week. I should have photographed them. I should have photographed these. He came in at 8 o'clock in the morning, just took an hour and a half. He had a special cupboard full of all these things to do these still lifes. He'd do a coloured one this week, he'd do a black one, maybe do a black and a brown one, a black, white and green one, or just all green. And so you had to look at what green was. You had to think, there's different kinds of white, even in these whites there. The white isn't the same, because although it is the same white, the different reflections of things nearby are affecting the colour of that white. So it was like really seriously studying the thing, and that's all gone. Sorry to harp on about it, but this has to come back.
Do you think the collaboration really expanded your practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had to read some stuff because of Mel, and which I don't mind. And no, I think it's good because it's if I work on my own, as I do quite a lot, but also work with other people. If you work with somebody else, then it takes you in to another dimension. You think, I hadn't thought about that. I wasn't going down that road. I wasn't thinking. Maybe, it's not. You're not in complete control of it. You have to go along with somebody else's kind of thoughts on it. You don't have to go along. You say, "No, fuck off. I'm not going to work with you." But in the main, you think, "Oh no, that's interesting." Or and I mean, it's like Mel saw. Here's a good example. Mel saw these drawings, which I was wanting to show him for some reason or something, and because he hadn't seen a lot of stuff lately that he'd liked very much. He'd been a bit kind of like my wife, a bit kind of, but anyway, when he saw these drawings, he got really sparked up. And he thought, I could do something. I thought so that cheered me up. I felt enthused that he got something from them. And then he went and wrote this text. And then we made this book, which we made a prototype of. You've got one prototype. Yeah. The Almonds in our house, which belongs to Mel. And we made two. I think we made about 3 or 4. I think we might have sold 2 somewhere.
We did.
But we want to remake that. I would like to remake that book, but not do it with silk, not do it with inkjet. Do it with silk screen. But it's actually very expensive to do it. I think I'm going to rework it on a silk screen. I'm not going to do it with Brad because it's too expensive. But I think there's a way to do it if we work the colours out. So you're doing 10 prints instead of 400 prints. That's the Glasgow Print Workshop works on it. Anyway, I don't want to say more collaboration, but it does that. It's good to be, as we are friends, it continues our friendship, because if Mel and I weren't sort of doing anything, I really, why would I go out with him for a drink? It's no good going for a drink. It's no, what I mean, it's like,
oh, that's right.
No, but I'm thinking about, we're talking about the other colleague the other day, spare time. I like him for a pint. go for a 1 pint now and again, but there's no, I don't want to see him very often because it's kind of like it's not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to work with them on anything.
We've had more projects than we've ever done. I mean, because we spend a lot of time projecting, as they used to say in the 18th century, which means thinking about things you might do. So a lot of our conversation circles around that one way or the other. And the other thing is, of course, is that Bruce isn't the only artist I've worked with making text, but he's by far, I mean, I started with Bruce doing that, and for me, of course, it's a different kind of work. It's a different kind of practice. It's a creative practice, and it's a collaborative practice, and that gets me going to write the kind of texts that I do. Well, I don't call them poems, but they're like, in some sense, they're like poems, but they're structured to fit into this particular structure of the book or whatever that we're doing, or in this case of the poster or whatever. So it's an extension.
Well, I'll say one more. Can I say one more?
I do.
Sorry, I say one more thing is that I don't know how this came about, but it was decided by Bernard Jacobs that we should, or somebody, or Robert, we should do a small book to complement to go with the show, the last show.
Yeah, I agree.
So I can't remember how that came about, to be honest with you. But anyway, it was agreed that this would happen. And then I sent Mel a photograph of me standing with a boulder. No, what did I send you first of all? I sent him a photograph.
Like a pebble that had been enlarged.
I made a big pebble, and I sent him a photograph of a big pebble of a sculpture. And I wrote some stupid remark like, "This is a new." And then Mel wrote this very funny response back. And then I thought, oh, that's quite fun. I like that. Because I sent it, back it came. He wasn't doing a Robert Motherwell. Mel writes a lot of stuff, but he finds it very difficult. I all find everything difficult. But what I mean is, if you're doing something which it's like me writing an obituary. You can't just write an obituary. You have to think about the neighbours and the wife and the children and the feelings of you have to be a bit. Yeah. You have to think about these things, and this thing's going. So, but Mel just went back, and it was very funny and very perceptive. I thought this is the way to do something. I saw Rob. I said, this is the way to proceed. This is the way that you should write stuff. I just send you something, you back, and all that stuff came back. It's very funny. That's in the book. Not all of it in the book. There's one part of the book's that. But I thought, if Mel did the same to me, I could say, oh.
Because it's a good thing about structure. This is it illustrates the point, which is that I'd seen these new paintings, and in a way, for the first time for some time, although I've liked a lot of the work that Bruce has been doing, I haven't wanted to write about it. But I thought, I want to write about these because I saw something in them that really, really interested me. Yeah. So I knew that I wanted to do an essay on it, but that's not.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Then we had this exchange, and then I said, to write the essay, I thought I'd go and do some recording. We'll record some conversations, see if it gives me some ideas. And while we were sitting thinking about that, I said, it helps me that we've got a structure. I said we could do, that could be part of the book, of course. I'm going to do the essay, that's another part. We're having a conversation. I said, why don't we do it a three-part piece, which is a Henry Moore thing, three-part piece. So I thought, that'll be Book of Sculpture, which is a kind of sculpture in itself, which reflects the fact that these are paintings as sculpture, or sculpture as paintings, or paintings about sculptures, or paintings about photographs of sculptures. And I should say that the thing about photographs and sculpture is something that Bruce and I have talked about endlessly for years. What does a photograph of a sculpture mean, and why should it be black and white or colour? Why is Anthony Caro's big book of sculptures, of his, the retrospective book, why are they all in black and white? There's a big decision being made there, and that, especially since he's the man who brought colour into sculpture, etc. So you think, yes. Do you see what I mean? Once we'd been thinking about this, so and all of that had fed into the fact that I'd responded in that way to those paintings, but. here was an opportunity to explore that. And also we had a structure. Once you've got a structure, you can begin to put things into it, you know.
It's easier.
So did this happen with all the knife edge books as well?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I've been trying to stress, that the key to going on is always a practical one, not a theoretical or a bright idea. It's always, where can you put this idea? How can you place this idea and make it live in a kind of vital way? It's that thing again, you know. It's your friend who said, I think I've quoted it in the essay, but what is it? Having ideas is not the difficult thing; it's where to put them.
No. And Bonnie Maranka said that.
Yes.
Yeah, she said, New York critic, you know.
Yeah.
It's not having ideas; it's where you put the ideas.
That's right.
It's not having good ideas; it's places to put the ideas.
Yes.
Which is quite important.